Great. So thanks so much. Ombawustich, Oki, Danatata, Tansi, Bozu, Tanshi. Hello, my name is Dawn Saunders-Dahl. My Stoney Nakoda gifted name is Abathia Waya. I have greeted you in the indigenous languages of the Stoney Nakoda, Blackfoot, Dene, Cree, Ojibwe, and Métis from the Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories. I'm the Indigenous curator for the public art work for this amazing facility, Ādisōke, at the Ottawa Public Library and Library and Archives Canada Joint Facility. I am not fluent in any of the languages I've greeted you in. They are my ways of recognizing and acknowledging Indigenous peoples and my continued commitment from attending the final TRC in Edmonton in 2014. I acknowledge that this project will take place in Ottawa on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Ādisōke Nation. Kwe, thank you all for joining us today. I also wanted to just let you know that since 2008, I have been actively working with Indigenous arts communities in Alberta through public art exhibits, projects, and events. The responsibility to understand my ancestry, to care for the land, and to share the teachings that influence my work in the office and in the studio. I am of Métis, Red River Ojibwe. Gruet was the name I was born with, and European ancestry. I'm honored to be here and honored to be part of this project. I would like to, at this time, introduce Nadia Meyer. She will be the Indigenous mentor for the projects we were going to talk about tonight. Nadia?
Thank you, Dawn. Ani, Kwe, hello, bonjour. Nadia Meyer. I'm a visual artist. Been practicing for over 20 years and have been practicing in public art for at least 10 years. And so I'm happy to be the public art mentor for this program. And I'm Algonquin from Kirigan-Zibi Anishinaabe First Nation. That's my reserve, although I was born in Montreal and raised in Montreal. And so I speak English and French and still learning Algonquin. And I just want to acknowledge that part of my role here was to assist in helping to develop a program that is very open and friendly to Algonquin peoples who are interested in public art, but may have not had opportunities doing public art projects. So there's a portion of this that's mentorship to get you prepared to apply and put your name in as if you're interested, and as well to follow through in the designing and making of the works and translating your artwork into public art opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. Yes, we want to make sure that everyone here knows that we are here to support you along the way. Please feel free to reach out to talk to us if you have an idea, and we'll help you translate it into those materials and go through the process of fabrication and installation, designing, all that stuff. We want to make sure that you know that, and we'll talk about this again at the end before we have some questions. So if All right, excellent. So this is the agenda tonight. We've done some welcoming and loud acknowledgements, and I'll introduce a few members of the team as we go through these slides. We wanted to make sure that we gave you all ample enough opportunity to understand the building and understand the calls that we have out here. So we'll start first with a history of the project from the design team. And they'll talk about the Algonquin consultation to date and where the locations are for these public art projects. And then we'll talk about the next steps, how to apply, how to contact us, and leave some room at the end for questions and answers. And in addition to the Algonquin call, I'll also be talking about the Inuit direct purchase briefly at the end of this project so that people also know how to apply to that and how to contact us. Next slide. So just to let you know, I have developed a number of calls. The exterior pillars, you may have seen that call, the interior wall installation, the exterior sculpture installations, and the mentor call. And I've just introduced you to Nadia Meyer, who's our mentor for these local artist calls. At this time, I'd like to invite Hannah Kingscott from the City of Ottawa to briefly talk about the other public art piece that will be featured in the facility.
Thanks, Dawn. So yeah, as Dawn mentioned, Jason Brew's studio, UK-based artist team, were awarded an Artist on Design Team commission back in 2019. And over the last couple of years, almost 3 now, following a series of community workshops that kind of ran in parallel with the design phase of the building, Jason Brew's studios have been working with the project team and Diamond Schmidt Architects to design a large-scale interactive digital artwork for the facility. So they're wrapping up the design phase right now, and hopefully we'll see that revealed at some point this year. So look out for that.
Great, and that piece will be in the large kind of area that we'll show you some pictures, and we'll show you where that kind of will be located. So you're aware that there's a big piece of public art also going in. But today's focus will be on the Algonquin calls. We have an interior multi-purpose room on the 2nd floor with a children's room option, as well as the exterior and or the interior glass design. And we'll dive in deeper about what these calls are as we go through the slides. And as I mentioned before, at the end, I'll talk briefly about the Inuit direct purchase. Next slide. So right now I'd like to introduce Sydney Brown from Diamond Schmidt Architects. She's going to talk about the history of the project, how the building was inspired using different materials, and all the Algonquin consultation to date. So go ahead, Sydney.
Thank you very much, Dawn, and good evening, everyone. So just a few words to introduce the project to you in case you haven't been part of the information sessions that have been set up over the last couple of years. The site is a really remarkable piece of property on the edge of downtown Ottawa, not far from the Ottawa River, and has great access both to the downtown as well as a system of paths and parkways leading along the edge of the river and connecting this site back to many parts of the landscape along the edge of the river, close to all kinds of shapes and forms that have had a huge impact on the way that we've approached the design of the site, not only thinking about the landscape as you see here, but also the forms of the building and the palette of materials that we've used. So the forms, curving forms of water, the sort of permanence of stone, and then the flexibility and life and warmth of wood have been a big part of the material inspiration for this project. Next slide, please. What you see here is a view taken along Albert Street looking toward the building. So you can see it's quite a large project. It's 4 and 5 stories high, fills almost all of a city block. So it's a big project, but there are all kinds of really great locations throughout, identified throughout the building for different art installations. And we'll talk about a few of those today. And I should say that through the course of developing the art that will be installed at different places along the building, the team of architects and builders will be working closely with Nadia and the artists to help put each one of these art projects into built form in its place within the facility. What you see here is a close-up view looking toward the north side of the building, some of the terraces and interior spaces that look out to the landscape and make connections between the interior and the exterior. Next slide, please. And just backing up again, another view taken from Wellington looking across the pathway and some of the parkland toward the exterior of the building. Next slide, please. And again, some of the exterior spaces, which are the site some of the other artwork calls that have been already issued, and will be spaces for gathering outside. And gathering spaces inside of the building exist on all floors. So what you're looking at here is the large central space with library spaces on one side and archive spaces on the other. And at this level and across all floors, moving up through 5 stories of the building, are a whole sequence of program spaces, which include a very diverse range of collections, programs, and services that are organized by the Ottawa Public Library, who has been the primary force behind this project. And then Library and Archives Canada, who have come more recently to the project, but bring an enormous wealth of collections and materials, programs, and services to the building. And there's a lot of information available online about the development of the building itself, but through the course of developing the project, there have been a number of public engagement sessions, including some very focused sessions with Algonquin elders from Pikwakanagan and Kitigan-Zibi. And through those conversations, the list that you see on the screen now was developed to identify a number of things that could be built into the design of the building, as well as the ongoing operation of the space, to make it more welcoming and useful and for Algonquin communities, and to help ensure that when members of the Algonquin communities come to this project, they see real connection. You see real connections to what happens here. So I'll talk briefly about a few of these, and ending with speaking about some of the art opportunities. Next slide, please. So to begin with, thinking about the landscape and the choice of plant material, and how the site can be developed with landscaping that is native to this site and this region. Next slide, please. Thinking about the approach to the building, how as you walk toward the building and enter, you could hear a welcome in different Indigenous languages. You can see pieces of art, and the columns that you see in each one of these drawings is part of one of the other art calls that Dawn had mentioned earlier. And as you enter the building, at the east entrance will be this medallion developed by Simon Proscope as part of the LRT program, but which is now being used across the city of Ottawa as a way of marking territory, recognizing territory orientation, and the approach to the building and its place within Algonquin territory. There have been a lot of conversations about the materials and forms of the building, and how to make it warm and open and welcoming, and the need for color and light on the interior. And certainly those conversations have had a huge impact on the form of the building itself. As you move up through the building, those conversations also led to discussions about the idea of creating an Algonquin educational video to talk about the history and culture of the nations of this area, and also to really focus on opportunities for storytelling, as opposed to always reading. That the spoken way of sharing stories is certainly an opportunity that will be expanded upon within this building through spaces for recording sound and sharing stories through spoken word. Next slide, please. One of the most physical outcomes of those conversations was the idea of creating a wigwam-inspired space within the building, and that led us to the development of actually two wigwam-inspired spaces, which are located on the second floor of the building and are shown here, highlighted in purple. One within the adult side of the building, where the Indigenous collections are concentrated, and on the left-hand side of the building within the children's storytime space. So both very easily accessible and prominent features on the second floor of the building. Next slide, please. At this point, I'd like to turn things over to Dawn, just to speak in a more specific way, Dawn and Nadia, about those two spaces, because those rooms are the locations of the first art calls that we'll be reviewing this evening.
So thank you, Sydney. As kind of described, so there's these two wigwam shapes, and within them there are different areas where an artist could intervene within the space. So artwork could be kind of installed on the doors where those openings are, or on the exterior walls. The pattern ceiling, I think maybe there's another slide that might better show where that could be, or the stone floor. You can see there's an opportunity there for some sort of design element in the stone floor, whether, I think another, can we go to the next slide? So I said, there's these wood acoustic panel walls. There's a carpeted floor, so a design element could be in the carpeted floor, or the exposed wood structures. They could be carved in some way. I think that's, yeah.
So these two spaces can speak to each other. You can choose as an artist if you'd like to address both these spaces, but it is required that you address this space. The adult space is a definite requirement. And we definitely want to encourage you to think about pattern that could be used in those acoustic panels that you see up on the ceiling, pattern that could be used on the tile floor in this room, or on the carpeted floor in the children's room. And options also are, like Nadia mentioned, to carve into doors or into some of the wood elements that are there. That you could have some really delicate, wonderful opportunities to tell some stories with those spaces. Next slide. Sydney, did you want to add anything here to these kinds of drawings?
Sure. What you're looking at here is a floor plan on the right and a section drawing on the left of the wigwam space in the adult areas of the building collections. And just to describe this room briefly, what you see in plan on the right-hand side is the circular room that's about roughly 25 feet across, large enough to hold 20, maybe 30 people sitting in circle. And there are two sets of doors leading in from the east and two sets of doors leading out from the west that lead toward the outdoor terrace that is adjacent to this space. And around the perimeter of the room, we have these specially built up acoustic walls to create a sense of privacy and acoustic quiet within the space, but they're interspersed with a series of small windows, so you can look into the space just to understand, is there something going on from outside of the room. And in between those, we have a series of solid walls that are made up of these acoustic wood screens. And so that's roughly the way the room is set up in plan. And on the left-hand side, you can see a view of the room as though it were cut in sections. So you can see that it has a slightly curved ceiling, a bit of a domed ceiling. That's where those acoustic panels are that Dawn was describing a moment ago, and then the tilted walls on either side, which are constructed of wood paneling and these very narrow windows. The room is set up for smudging, as are a number of locations within the building, but in this case, the space has been configured so that it can be used for conversations, for gatherings, for meetings, for song, for quiet events, or when it's not in use as a special event space, the doors would be open and it's available and used for all visitors to the library.
So some of them, as we had kind of talked about, one of the projects, a potential idea could be working with the stone floor in the adult room, and here are some material examples of the two stones that we've already kind of pre-selected, although it could be something else or it could be in addition to. One of them is a honed finish, so it's a little bit more darker and polished. And the other one is more of a sandblasted finish, so it's a little bit more rough and light. So those stones could be patterned in a certain way, or we could even have, I think in the next slide, there's examples of, different things that you could think about for the flooring. Dawn, did you want to speak to some of these?
Sure. So another opportunity is you don't have to use that stone. If you feel there's a different kind of material you'd like to use, we would be happy to figure that out with you. And here are some examples of other public art pieces that have been done in the past. On the left, these are different kinds of slate, different colors, form. They could be cut into different patterns and thinking about those colors of these different kinds of stone. And you can place them in new ways and tell a different story. The next picture on the right, you see this kind of, no, sorry, go back to the last slide. I didn't mean to say. This picture here where the gold trail is, that's actually a public art piece by a Métis artist here in Alberta that outlines the trap line up in northern Alberta, and it's in the floor of a college here. So there's different ways to talk about mapping or the stars or constellations that you could tell those stories in the floor. Again, next to that picture is of a different kind of mosaic. You don't have to use the whole floor. You could actually put little circles and tell stories of different kinds of animals or plant life, or again, the stars constellation that you could install in different parts of the floor. You don't feel you have to use the whole floor. We're open to those kinds of ideas. And the last picture there is an abstracted petal pattern that represents the moons, again, used with, I'm sorry, Sydney, what was the material for that project?
In that case, it was stone. It was made of tiny pieces of stone mixed into terrazzo.
Oh, into terrazzo. Yeah, so there's all kinds of different methods. And again, Nadia and I are here to help you flesh out your idea and help figure out what kind of materials and what kind of design and pattern you'd like to put in the floor, if that's what you choose to do, is to focus on the floor. Next slide.
Yeah, because you don't have to focus on the floor. There's also an opportunity here to focus on the doors. And here we have kind of 4 different examples of what that looks like. Although the first picture, that's kind of how the walls are on the inside. Isn't that right, Sydney? They're cut really finely so that they bend and create that circular shape. The second picture is an example of taking a digital file and then having the machine cut out all the little tiny holes. The third example is kind of a hand-carved door. And the fourth one is somebody who's sculpted in one material and then had it scanned and then had a machine kind of recarve it, right? So there's lots of different types of translations that could occur. The particular wood that we'll be using is a Baltic birch for the doors also, right?
The walls are Baltic birch, but at this point, white ash would be
white
used for the ribs of the room as well as the doors.
Thank you, Sydney.
Great, so next slide. So again, like we mentioned before, that you could have a custom pattern printed on fabric for this kind of ceiling. This is not what the wigwam would look like. This is just an example of what this fabric pattern could look like in the white areas. I encourage those that bead or quilt or make fabric patterns or skirts, that maybe there's a pattern that you'd like to see reflected in that ceiling.
Or anybody interested in drawing or wallpaper or kind of tiling an image over or telling a story in some way. You could even think about if your first practice is painting, how to translate some of your, you know, imagery from the painting into this.
Or printmaking. Yeah, excellent. Next slide. So this is the children's area. So again, we encourage you, if you'd like to have these patterns repeated into the children's wigwam area, the same options exist, except that the flooring is carpet, not stone. But there is an opportunity for you to design a pattern in the carpet that would be very suitable for the space. But otherwise, the same materials are being used in this area, the same wood, but the doors are glass. You'll see through there. So there isn't an opportunity for the doors here, but they're because these are glass.
I would just add, in the previous view, the large doors are glass, but there are also two smaller doors, child-sized doors that lead into the space that could absolutely become part of the art call and be related to what you might choose to do in the adult round space. And so those are the smaller doors on either side of the room, just sort of 3.5, 4 feet high, child-sized doors. And what you see in these drawings again is the shape of the round room, this time with 3 pairs of doors on each side, the larger glass doors, and then the smaller doors on the opposite quarter points of the space. And then again, just a section showing approximately the size and shape of that room relative to the size of the people who will be using it.
I think another thing that's really important to kind of point out is that you know, we'll be working with manufacturers, right? So you wouldn't be kind of designing, you'd be designing an image for a carpet, but you wouldn't be necessarily in charge of making the carpet if that was one of the ways that you went. Or similarly for the acoustic panels that go up in the ceiling. Although if you are a carver, you're welcome to, you know, to put that as your idea to carve the door, and then we'll talk about what that looks like.
Great. So next slide, and that's how we'll talk about it a little bit more now. Is that we've given the artists 2 options, like Nadia was saying. If you'd like to design, fabricate, and install, so that means making it from step 1 to the end, and if you want to do that, then we would provide a $100,000 fee for that work. But if you only want to design and provide electronic files to create those designs for the patterns, etc., then we offer a $30,000 design fee. And then the team here would have to find someone else to fabricate and install it. So there's 2 options for these sites where you can choose to either install it and make it all yourself, or you can choose just to design it. And we'll help you through both of those processes if you need it. So the other call that we have here is the exterior glass. And this is where we would like to see a designed pattern or of animals or plants or what stars or any sort of storytelling that you'd like to have that could be repeated on the glass. And the purpose of this exterior glass is there is typically a pattern on them that would deter birds from flying into the windows. And we have this link in the calls. So if you'd like to read more about it, we can make sure that you have the calls sent to you and you can click that link. And we really encourage artists to think about what that pattern could be. We do not require you to have a pattern on all of the windows. You can leave some windows blank, and then it would have the basic design that is required for glass for the safety to keep birds from flying into them. But we would love to see what kind of ideas or images that you'd like to see on the glass. Next slide. Again, this is another view of there is a lot of glass in the building, but you do not have to use all of it. Next slide. And did Nadia or Cindy want to talk about these options?
Well, these are just examples to kind of like help generate some ideas or think about how you might translate something that you already do or something that you've always wanted to do. So maybe like the bottom picture, it's a little bit small, but you can see it looks like ferns or trees, right? So part of it's sandblasted and part of it's not. Well, I don't know if it's sandblasted, but anyway, that's another matter. Or the image right above it is a whole bunch of text. So maybe there's like a story that you're interested in telling, or you know, and you know, maybe it's in syllabics, or maybe it's in Anishinaabemowin. You know, it can be all sorts of things. And really, as Dawn had described, like this is kind of, those red dots are to prevent birds from hitting the glass. So what the design would do is instead of just regular dots, it would be an image of some sort or some sort of kind of repeating pattern or something. Is there anything else, Sydney, that I should add in?
That's great. I would just say that there's lots of, obviously it's a big building, there's lots of glass, and the idea is to find ways to start to develop imagery, and then we'll work together to understand exactly where and how it's applied around the building. The important part at this point is really to think about what the artwork might be, and then we would work together to help to figure out how best to execute that.
Right, thank you. Next slide. And this is a picture of like potentially looking outside, right? One of the areas that that could be used. But as you know.
I would just add one comment there. Once these patterns are applied to the glass, you have some sense of them when you're on the inside of the building. You'll be looking out through them, and they also cast shadows inside of the building. So whatever pattern is applied to the glass will create shadows inside of the space. So they will be, they'll be understood and experienced as you move around the building from the outside as well as from the inside of the building.
And it'll be different times of day, different seasons, all those things, lovely things to consider, and could make really fun art pieces, reflecting those kinds of different areas and different times of year. The other option here is also designing pattern for the interior, which serves a different purpose. These glass barrier walls are within the main hall, the second and third floor. And the design on those is basically to help avoid people to not walk into the glass. So we go on to the next slide. Again, we'd love to see at minimum, as indicated here, pattern is required at 50 millimeters high so that people aren't walking into these glass spaces. And again, if Nadia and Cindy want to talk about some of the inspiration here.
Sure. I mean, these are just some examples of what it might look like, right? So one is kind of like, you know, a line drawing that looks a bit like a woodcut or a lino cut, or again, some sort of text, or maybe it's just kind of like text, you know, in the area where it needs to be, or maybe it's the one where there's, I guess, students behind a room or something. So, you know, the parts that are white, right? They're a little bit opaque. So you could play between the transparency and what you can't see. And then I think, Sydney, the one on the far left of the screen, that would be kind of like the minimum requirement.
Yes, that just illustrates if you were to do something tiny, small that met the minimum building code requirement, it could be this simple, this discrete and repeated, but it can also be something very different, much more, much more expansive. And these other examples are really just shown to give you some sense of the range of opportunities and scales, but it's really quite open-ended. On the exterior of the building and the interior, we have to make sure that in some way we're still meeting the building code requirement, but it can be interpreted in many, many different ways.
Sure. And like just, you know, spitballing some ideas, like maybe instead of circles, there are seed pods, or, you know, Dawn, you talked about constellations earlier, you know, so, or maybe it's animals or shape, you know, animal shapes. So there's lots of possibilities of what it could be.
And I believe with the interior, there's an option to add color, where the exterior color would be much more challenging. But with the interior, you know, you could think about it in terms of color as well. So the budget for the design for the interior is $30,000, and the actual fabrication and things will be taken care of by the public art budget. We want to make sure that all artists, you can work as a team. You'll benefit from continued mentorship. Nadia and I are here to help you develop your idea and apply. And if you are selected, then Nadia is there to help continue that process, to create any digital files that are needed, to help assist with some mentorship around what production and fabrication and installation means, and how to as well continue to bridge between the Algonquin community and ensure that the stories that you want to tell are stories that are supported by your community. Next slide. So these deadlines are coming up. We wanted to keep this application process as simple as possible. So all we're asking for you by May 27th is to submit an expression of interest. And that is just a 2-page document at the most, explaining who you are, what you've done, what your past experiences or projects have been, and a general idea of what you'd like to see in one of these sites that we've just described, in one of the 4 sites or all 4. You can apply to all 4 if you'd like. We just would ask that you'd apply with separate applications. If you're selected to be shortlisted, that's where we'll help you some more in this process. We will help you design, help you develop the site-specific proposal, and you get a fee for that of $1,500 to create that proposal that will be reviewed by a jury. Next slide. So this is the basic timeline. As I mentioned, the first deadline is May 27th. And then we'll review what you've done, and we'll arrange for times for you to meet with us to talk more about your proposal and give you recommendations around materials and all that kind of stuff. And then we ask that proposal, if you could actually mute anybody who's on right now. A full proposal is, the deadline is Halloween, October 31st. And then we'll make sure that we're consulting with elders about your idea. And we feel that it's really important that those that are shortlisted, that you get an opportunity to present in the public, because a lot of public art projects require you to present to a jury. It's a new kind of thing that many municipalities are looking at. So we wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to develop what that could look like for future opportunities. And the basic design, fabrication, installation, if you're selected, you'll know by the end of this year, beginning of next year, and then it's 2 to 3 years to develop the artwork and create it. And the hope is that the facility will be open to the public in 2025, 2026. So I'd like to speak a little bit now for those of you who are interested in the Inuit call. There is a direct purchase, so we're looking for Inuit artists to submit their expressions of interest. You should live within a 150-kilometer radius of Ottawa. And we definitely want work that's contemporary and innovative, durable and easily maintained, and not have anything that is protruding that could cause injury, and also be on a freestanding base that can be easily moved. This piece will, as you saw in some of the first pictures, it'll be in that main kind of main floor entryway of the building. So it'll be on the first floor. and they'd like to have it moved to accommodate for many programs and events that they'd like to have in the building. Next slide. The budget for this is $45,000. And again, you have a few years if you'd like to create something new. We would like it delivered by 2024, 2025, so that it's ready for installation when the project is completed and open to the public in 2025 and 2026. So how to apply for all the artists this first stage? We'd ask that you provide a resume of your past experiences in art, where you've shown before, if you've helped install artwork, anything that's related to creating art and creating events or projects in public spaces. We'd love to hear your artist statement. So what is your artwork about? Who are you? Where are you from? What kind of materials do you like to use? It's a maximum of 1 page to just talk about your artwork and how you got to today. And if you could include up to 10 images, that would be great. And they all should be submitted as one file to publicartprogram@ottawa.ca. All these calls are listed on Ottawa's social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Public Art Ottawa. So please just send us an email and we'll send you the calls directly, or you can download them off of the social media links there. And now we'd love to open it up for any questions. And we also wanted to make sure that you had all of our emails. So my email is there, indigenouspublicart@gmail. Nadia's email is publicartmentor@gmail.com. And Hannah, who coordinates the City of Ottawa Public Art Calls, is publicartprogram@ottawa.ca. If you'd really like to talk to us on the phone, please send us an email and we'll schedule a time to talk to you on the phone, or we can Zoom, whatever you'd prefer.